Dr. Nadia Patel stared at the strange biosignature pulsing across her medical scanner's display. In 15 years of xenobiology and emergency medicine, she'd never seen anything like it. The signal originated from a sleek vessel drifting in the darkness between stars, its hull gleaming with intricate patterns that seemed to shift in the light of Mercy's Dawn's forward beacons. "What do you make of it?" Captain Raman's voice crackled through the comm. The veteran humanitarian captain had seen her share of unusual situations, but even she sounded uncertain. "It's definitely alive," Nadia replied, adjusting the scanner settings. "But the cellular degradation pattern is unlike anything in our database. Whatever's in there is dying, Captain." The distress signal had reached them 6 hours ago, a desperate plea in an unknown language that somehow conveyed its urgency even without translation. Mercy's Dawn, one of Earth's premier medical rescue vessels, had been the only ship close enough to respond. Security scan shows no weapon signatures, Lieutenant Torres reported from Tactical. "But those hull patterns, they're giving off some kind of energy reading we can't identify." Nadia gathered her emergency kit, mind already racing through possible scenarios. "Captain, request permission to board with the medical team." Denied. Raman's response was immediate. "First contact protocols." "With respect, Captain," Nadia cut in. "Someone over there is dying." First contact protocols weren't written for emergency medicine. Every minute we waste could be the difference between life and death. A long pause followed. Nadia held her breath, knowing she was asking her captain to risk not just their safety, but potentially diplomatic incidents with an unknown species. Finally, Raman spoke. "Take Torres and 2 security officers. Full quarantine protocols. One hint of trouble, you evacuate immediately." "Understood." Nadia nodded to Torres as they headed for the shuttle bay. Her heart raced with equal parts excitement and apprehension. This was what she'd trained for, pushing the boundaries of xenomedicine, saving lives across species barriers. The shuttle ride was tense. As they approached the alien vessel, the shifting patterns on its hull became more pronounced, rippling like waves on water. A circular portal arised open, revealing a docking bay that seemed to breathe with bioluminescent light. "Those patterns," Torres muttered, "they're not decorative. Look how they're guiding us in." Nadia's scanner beeped insistently. "The biosignature's getting weaker. We need to move." They docked with practiced efficiency. The alien ship's atmosphere was breathable, but protocol demanded they keep their suits sealed. As they stepped through the airlock, Nadia felt a strange tingling sensation, as if the air itself was charged with static electricity. The corridor beyond curved organically, its walls pulsing with the same shifting patterns they'd seen outside. Nadia's scanner led them deeper into the vessel, where the patterns grew more complex and the air more charged. They found the first body in what appeared to be a control room. The alien lay crumpled near a console, its humanoid form elegant even in death. Its skin had an opalescent quality, and delicate tendrils that might have been hair or sensory organs spread around its head like a crown. "Life signs?" Torres asked. "Weapon ready." Nadia shook her head. "None. But look at these markings." She gestured to patches of discoloration on the alien skin. This wasn't natural. Some kind of biological agent. Her scanner chirped urgently, directing them toward the ship's core. As they approached, the energy in the air intensified until Nadia's hair stood on end beneath her suit. The patterns on the walls pulsed faster, almost urgently. They found the second alien in a chamber that could only be described as a blend of medical bay and throne room. Unlike the first, this one still lived, barely. It lay on a raised platform surrounded by floating holographic displays, its form similar to the first, but larger, more elaborate. The tendrils around its head formed intricate patterns that somehow conveyed authority even as they lay limp. "By all the stars," Torres breathed. "That's not just any alien." "No," Nadia agreed, already moving forward with her medical kit. "That's their leader." The alien's eyes snapped open. entirely silver with no pupils or iris, and fixed on Nadia. A voice echoed in her mind, weak but unmistakably feminine. "You are not like the others." Nadia stumbled, caught off guard by the telepathic contact. "I'm Dr. Nadia Puddle from the Earth medical vessel Mercy's Dawn. We're here to help." Earth. The alien's mental voice carried a mix of surprise and something else. Hope. The young species. The ones who still dream. "Don't try to speak," Nadia said, running her scanner over the alien's body. The readings made her blood run cold. "This infection, it's systematic. Targeted." Yes, bitterness colored the telepathic words. "A gift from those who feared change, who would rather see their queen die than allow us to evolve." Queen. The word hit Nadia like a physical blow. This wasn't just a first contact situation. This was potentially first contact with a major alien civilization, and their ruler was dying in front of her. "Captain," she calmed quickly, "we're going to need the full isolation ward prepared, and contact Earth Command. Tell them." She took a deep breath. "Tell them we got a dying alien queen who's apparently the victim of an assassination attempt." The queen's silver eyes held Nadia's. They said no one would answer our call, that humans were too primitive, too afraid. Nadia began unpacking her medical kit, her movements swift and sure despite the gravity of the situation. "Well, Your Majesty, I'm about to prove them wrong on both counts." As if in response to her words, the patterns on the walls pulsed brighter, and Nadia felt the weight of history settling around her. In the space between stars, a human doctor and an alien queen faced each other across a gulf of biology and culture, about to embark on a journey that would change both their civilizations forever. The isolation ward aboard Mercy's Dawn hummed with activity as Nadia studied the complex molecular structure displayed in the holographic projector. Queen Vixera's condition had stabilized, but only barely. The bioapp unattacking her system was like nothing in Earth's medical database. Elegant, precise, and absolutely lethal. "Your people created this?" Nadia asked, trying to keep the horror from her voice as she adjusted another scan. The queen lay in a specially modified containment field, her silver eyes tracking Nadia's movements. "The Zethari are masters of biological science," she replied telepathically. "It is our greatest achievement and our greatest weakness." A warning chime from the biomonitors interrupted them. Nadia rushed to adjust the containment field's parameters as Vixera's body temperature spiked dangerously. The queen's opalescent skin had taken on a darker hue, the bioluminescent patterns that seemed to flow beneath it growing erratic. "That's the third spike in 2 hours," Nadia muttered. "The weapon isn't just attacking your cells, it's adapting to our treatments, as it was designed to do." Vixera's mental voice carried resignation. "My opponents were thorough." Before Nadia could respond, the ward's doors slid open. Captain Raman entered, her expression grave. "Doctor, we have a situation. 3 Zethari warships just dropped out of FTL. They're demanding we return their queen immediately." "Return her to what?" "A death sentence." Nadia gestured at her readings. "She won't survive the transfer, let alone whatever they have planned. They claim they have their own medical facilities. The same facilities that failed to stop this infection in the first place." Nadia cut in. "Or perhaps the ones where this weapon was created." "Careful, Doctor." Vixera's thoughts carried a warning. "Those ships carry members of the High Council. They do not respond well to directness." The ward's comm system crackled. "Unknown vessel." A new voice resonated both audibly and mentally, heavy with authority. "You have illegally detained our sovereign. Return her immediately or face the consequences of your primitive interference." Nadia saw Raman's hand move toward her comm badge, but Vixera spoke first, her telepathic voice suddenly strong enough to fill the entire ward. "I am your sovereign, Council Speaker Televor. Knock your prisoner." These humans answered a call you ignored, or perhaps arranged. There was a long pause. When Televor spoke again, His mental voice was smoother, more controlled. "My queen, we only seek to return you to proper care. These humans cannot possibly understand the complexities of Zethari biology." And yet, Vixera's thoughts carried a dangerous edge. They recognized an assassination attempt that our own healers somehow missed. Nadia watched the exchange while continuing her analysis. Something about the weapon's structure nagged at her. It was too perfect, too specifically tailored to Zethari physiology. The kind of precision that would require intimate knowledge of your medical database, she blurted out. The weapon. They must have used your own medical records to design it. That's why it adapts so perfectly to your biology. The Queen's silver eyes widened slightly. The first physical reaction Nadia had seen from her. The medical archives are sealed. Only the High Council has access. Which means, Nadia continued, her mind racing, they'd also have access to any potential treatments. Your Majesty, I need those records. Telvor's response was immediate. Absolutely not. Our medical knowledge is sacred. We will not share it with an underdeveloped species. Sacred. Nadia's patience snapped. Your queen is dying from a weapon built using that sacred knowledge. Either share the database, or explain to your people how your pride killed their sovereign. Doctor, Raman warned, but Vixera raised a hand. The human speaks truth, Televor. Pride has already cost us dearly. The Queen's mental voice took on a formal tone. By my authority as sovereign of the Zethari, I command you to transmit our complete medical database to this vessel. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Televor responded, his thoughts tight with barely controlled anger. As you command, my queen. But know that the council will not forget this. Breach of tradition. No, Vixera replied softly. I expect they won't. As the data began streaming into Mercy's Dawn's computers, Nadia noticed the Queen's bio-readings fluctuating again. Your Majesty, that took a lot of strength you don't have to spare. Perhaps. Vixera's mental voice had grown weaker. But I find myself unwilling to let their pride claim another victory. Her silver eyes met Nadia's. You spoke to them as no one has dared in centuries. Yeah, well, Nadia checked the latest test results. I've never been great at diplomatic niceties when lives are at stake. Good. The Queen's thoughts carried a hint of amusement. We Zethari have had quite enough of diplomacy lately. The ward's computer chimed, indicating the database transfer was complete. Nadia immediately began cross-referencing it with her analysis of the bioweapon. The Zethari medical knowledge was incredible, centuries ahead of Earth in some areas. But as she dug deeper, her excitement turned to concern. This is bad, she muttered, drawing Raman and Vixera's attention. The weapon isn't just attacking your body. It's specifically targeting the biological patterns that make Zethari technology work. Your entire technological base is built on biological principles, isn't it? Yes, Vixera confirmed. Our ships, our cities, even our communication networks, all grown rather than built, all connected through patterns similar to those that give us life. Then this wasn't just an assassination attempt, Nadia realized. Anyone who controls this weapon could potentially disable your entire civilization. The implications hung heavy in the air. Raman straightened, her captain's training taking over. I'm contacting Earth Command. This just became more than a medical emergency. It became more than that. Vixera's thoughts were grim. The moment your ship answered our call. The question now, Dr. Patel, is whether your species is ready for what comes next. Nadia met the Queen's silver gaze. With respect, Your Majesty, I think the real question is whether your people are ready for change. Because beating this weapon will require something the Zethari seem to have forgotten, the ability to adapt. Outside the ward's windows, the 3 Zethari warships loomed like dark sentinels, their bioorganic hulls pulsing with barely contained power. On their bridges, Nadia knew, proud counselors watched and waited, their centuries of tradition colliding with a future they'd never imagined, one where a human doctor dared to challenge their most sacred beliefs. Nadia's fingers flew across the holographic interface as she compared the Zeth-Eri medical data with her latest scans. 3 days of non-stop research had yielded both revelations and frustrations. The bioweapon was a masterpiece of biological engineering, but its very perfection might be its weakness. Your entire medical science is based on pattern manipulation, she said, gesturing to the complex molecular structures floating before her. You don't just treat symptoms, you redirect the fundamental biological rhythms of life itself. Yes, Vixera's mental voice had grown weaker, but her interest remained sharp. All life contains patterns. We simply learn to speak their language. The Queen's condition had deteriorated despite their best efforts. The luminescent patterns beneath her skin flickered erratically, and the bioweapon had begun attacking her neural pathways. Even telepathic communication was becoming difficult. But that's just it, Nadia continued, excitement cutting through her exhaustion. You're so advanced at pattern manipulation that you've forgotten something basic. Sometimes you need to break the pattern completely. Lieutenant Torres, who'd been helping analyze the weapon's code, looked up from his station. What are you thinking, Doc? Human medicine is crude by Zeth-Eri standards, Nadia explained, pulling up new diagrams. We can't manipulate biological patterns like they can. Instead, we developed other methods. Chemical interventions, targeted radiation, genetic modification. What if we combined approaches? Impossible. The new voice belonged to Renhal, a Zeth-Eri healer who'd been sent over from the council ships to observe their work. Mixing our sacred methods with primitive techniques would be exactly what the weapons designers never considered. Nadia cut in. They created something that adapts to Zeth-Eri treatments. But what happens if we hit it with something completely foreign to your medical science? Vixera's silver eyes had been tracking the exchange. Explain. Nadia projected a new simulation. We use human radiation therapy to disrupt the weapon's basic structure, then immediately follow with Zeth-Eri pattern manipulation to rebuild the damaged tissue. The weapon won't be able to adapt because it's never encountered this combination before. Madness, Renhal declared. The combination of technologies could kill her instantly. Doctor, Captain Raman spoke from the doorway, where she'd been quietly observing. The Council is demanding an update. They're threatening military action if we don't show progress soon. Let them threaten. Nadia turned to Vixera. Your Majesty, I believe this will work. But you need to understand, this hasn't just never been done before. It goes against everything your people believe about medical treatment. The Queen was silent for a long moment. The monitors showed her vital signs continuing to decline. Finally, her thoughts reached out, weaker than ever but clear with purpose. My people believe many things, Doctor. They believe in the sanctity of tradition, the purity of our methods, the superiority of our science. Her silver eyes fixed on Nadia. They also believed no one would answer our distress call, that humans were too primitive to help, that you would bow to their threats and demands. They were wrong about those things, Nadia said softly. Yes, a ghost of amusement colored the Queen's thoughts. Perhaps it is time they were wrong about something else. My Queen, Renhal protested. The Council. Vixera's mental voice suddenly carried an edge of steel, is not dying on this bed. I am sovereign of the Zeth-Eri, and I choose to trust this human doctor. Proceed, Dr. Patel. Nadia didn't waste time. Torres, begin calibrating the radiation equipment. Captain, we'll need full power to the medical systems. She turned to Renhal. I need the exact frequencies your people use for neural pattern restoration. Help us or get out of my ward. The Zeth-Eri healer stood frozen for a moment, centuries of tradition warring with the reality before him. Then, slowly, he moved to a console and began entering data. The next hours were a blur of intense concentration. They started with targeted radiation bursts, precisely calculated to disrupt the weapon's molecular structure without causing permanent damage. Vixera's body convulsed as the treatment began, the patterns beneath her skin flaring wildly. Neural degradation accelerating, Torres reported tensely. The weapons fighting back. Now, Nadia signaled to Renhall, who initiated the Zetheri pattern manipulation sequence. Streams of living light poured from the medical equipment, wrapping around the Queen's form. Where human radiation had created chaos, Zetheri science now worked to restore order, but in new patterns, ones the weapon had never encountered. It's working, Nadia breathed, watching the readings. The weapon can't adapt fast enough to both types of treatment. It's breaking down at the molecular level. Vixera's back arched as the competing therapies fought through her system. Her mental voice screamed in their minds, not just pain, but centuries of accumulated knowledge being rewritten in moments. Hold on, Nadia urged, adjusting the radiation levels. Your body's learning a new dance, Your Majesty. The steps are different, but the rhythm's still there. The Queen's silver eyes snapped open, blazing with an inner light that filled the ward. The patterns beneath her skin shifted, changed, then settled into entirely new configurations. On the monitors, the weapon's signature began to fade. Pattern stabilization occurring, Renhall reported, his professional detachment cracking with wonder. The neural pathways, they're not just healing, they're evolving, adapting. That's impossible, one of the council observers protested. Our patterns are fixed at birth. They cannot. Vixera's mental voice rang clear and strong through their minds. Perhaps it is time we reconsidered what we believe impossible. Her silver eyes found Nadia's, particularly when it comes to underestimating our younger allies. The monitors showed the weapon's presence diminishing rapidly, unable to cope with the hybrid therapy. But Nadia knew they'd done more than just defeat an assassination attempt. They'd proven that progress didn't have to mean abandoning tradition. It meant building upon it, allowing it to grow and change. As the last traces of the weapon faded from the Queen's system, Nadia felt the weight of history settling around them again. In combining human innovation with Zetheri wisdom, they'd done more than save a life. They'd opened a door between their civilizations that could never truly be closed again. The question was, were both sides ready for what would come through it? The grand chamber of the Zetheri flagship pulsed with tension. Nadia stood before the assembled council members, their masked faces reflecting the bioorganic lighting in unsettling patterns. Queen Vixera sat on her recovered throne, her newly evolved patterns gleaming with unprecedented brilliance beneath her skin. This human has corrupted our most sacred medical traditions. Council Speaker Telvor's mental voice resonated through the chamber. The changes to our sovereign's biological patterns are unprecedented, dangerous. The changes, Vixera cut in, saved my life, and revealed possibilities our people have ignored for centuries. Nadia remained silent, studying the council members. Their ornate robes couldn't hide their discomfort with her presence. The successful treatment of their queen had forced them to convene this session, but she could sense their resistance to what it meant. The human treatment was effective, Telvor conceded, but the long-term implications are precisely what concerns you, isn't it? Nadia finally spoke. Not the medical implications, but the political ones. A ripple of outrage passed through the council. You dare interrupt? I dare because I've seen your medical database now, Nadia continued. Your people could have developed these hybrid treatments centuries ago. You chose not to. The question is, why? Vixera leaned forward, her silver eyes intense. Answer her, Televor. Why did our healers never explore such possibilities? The council speaker's mask shifted, displaying complex patterns of agitation. Our ways have served us for millennia. Change brings chaos, uncertainty. Change brings growth, Nadia countered. Your own biology proves it. The patterns that make your civilization possible, they evolved. They adapted. Yet somewhere along the way, you decided to stop evolving. Enough. A different council member rose. This human speaks of things she cannot understand. Our traditions. Your traditions, Vixera's mental voice carried deadly calm, were used to create a weapon that nearly destroyed your queen and threatened your entire civilization. Perhaps it is time we questioned why we follow them so blindly. The chamber's organic walls pulsed faster, reflecting the rising tensions. Nadia felt the weight of countless silver eyes upon her, some hostile, others curious. There is another matter. Captain Raman spoke from where she stood with the Earth delegation. The bioweapon. Our analysis suggests it couldn't have been created by a small group. The level of access required implies council involvement. Vixera finished. A fact I have been contemplating during my recovery. Telvor's mask displayed alarm. My queen, surely you don't suggest. I suggest nothing. Vixera rose, her new patterns casting shifting shadows across the chamber. I merely observed that those most vocally opposed to change were also those with access to create such a weapon. The implications hung heavy in the air. Nadia watched several council members shift uncomfortably, their masks displaying complex patterns of anxiety. We have received a transmission from Earth Command, Raman continued smoothly. They are proposing the Joint Medical Research Initiative, an exchange of knowledge under carefully controlled conditions. Unacceptable, Telvor declared. Our medical knowledge is not for sharing. Your medical knowledge, Nadia pointed out, just benefited from human innovation. Imagine what both our species could achieve together. The human speaks wisdom. A new voice joined in. Renhal stepped forward, his healer's robes shimmering. I witnessed their treatment firsthand. Their methods are different, yes, but they see patterns we have become blind to. More voices joined the debate, the chamber filling with a cascade of mental exchanges. Nadia noticed younger council members particularly seemed intrigued by the possibilities, while the older ones grew increasingly agitated. Suddenly, the chamber's lighting flared red. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL, Torres reported from his security position. Zetheri vessels, but not responding to recognition signals. Telvor's mask displayed triumph. Ah, the conservative fleet arrives. Now we can end this unfortunate episode. Conservative fleet, Raman demanded. The conservative fleet's ultimatum echoed through the Grand Chamber. Surrender the Queen for purification. End all contact with humans, or face immediate attack. As the council chamber erupted in panic, Nadia noticed something odd about the tactical display. The fleet's bio-patterns, she whispered to Vixera. They're synchronized in a way that shouldn't be possible naturally. The Queen's silver eyes widened. Unless they're being controlled, Nadia finished. The same way the bioweapon controlled your patterns. Understanding flashed between them. Telvor hadn't just created a weapon to assassinate the Queen. He'd developed a way to control any Zetheri biological technology. The conservative fleet was just a demonstration. You would destroy everything we are. Vixera's mental voice carried across the chamber, silencing the chaos, all to maintain your grip on power. Telvor's mask displayed patterns of cold satisfaction. I would preserve our purity. These humans have already corrupted you, my queen. Look at your changed patterns, an abomination against nature. Nature. Nadia stepped forward. Nature is constant change, constant adaptation. What you're doing, that's the real abomination. The chamber's walls pulsed with rising energy as Telvor raised his hands. Enough. The conservative fleet awaits my command. Surrender now, or what? Nadia interrupted. You'll reveal to everyone how you've corrupted your own people's technology, how you've turned their sacred patterns into weapons. Confusion rippled through the council. Younger members began backing away from Telvor, their masks displaying patterns of dawning horror. Show them, Vixera commanded. Show them what your traditional methods have created. Nadia activated her medical scanner, projecting its readings for all to see. The conservative fleet's synchronized patterns matched the bioweapon's signature perfectly. Impossible, a council member gasped, to corrupt our living ships in such a way. Oh, it's worse than that, Nadia continued. The bioweapon that nearly killed your queen. It wasn't just designed to kill her. It was a test run for something bigger. Tell them, Televor. Tell them what you really planned. The speaker's mask flickered with rage. Our civilization has grown weak, complacent. The old ways demand purity, strength. The old ways. Vixera rose from her throne, her evolved patterns blazing, taught us to listen to all patterns of life, not twist them to our will. Telvor's hand moved to his robe, but Taurus was faster. The security officer's stun blast caught the speaker before he could activate whatever device he'd hidden. The fleet, Raman warned. They're powering weapons. No, Vixera's voice rang with authority. They are about to learn what true evolution means. The queen closed her eyes, and suddenly the chamber filled with light. Her new patterns, born from the merger of human and Zetheri medicine, began to pulse in complex sequences. The walls of the chamber resonated in response. "What are you doing?" Telvor demanded from where he lay restrained. "Showing our people a new pattern," Vixera replied. "One that embraces change instead of fearing it." Through the windows, they watched as her signal spread across space, touching the conservative fleet. Ship after ship's biopatterns shifted, broke free from Telvor's control, and realigned themselves to their natural state. "Impossible," Telvor whispered. The control patterns were perfect. They were based on old patterns, Nadia explained, unable to keep the satisfaction from her voice. They couldn't adapt to the Queen's evolved signature, just like your bioweapon couldn't adapt to human treatment. The council chamber had fallen silent, every eye fixed on their queen as she demonstrated what their civilization could become. Her patterns spoke of change, of growth, of possibilities their rigid traditions had never imagined. "The conservative fleet stands down," Torres reported. "They're requesting permission to land and have their crews examined for pattern manipulation." "Permission granted." Vixera opened her eyes. "And send word to Earth Command. Tell them the Zetheri accept their proposal for a medical research exchange, with some additions." She turned to Nadia. "We will need someone to oversee this collaboration, someone who understands both our ways and the importance of breaking old patterns when necessary." Nadia felt the weight of silver eyes upon her, not with hostility now, but with hope. "I'm just a doctor, Your Majesty." "No," Vixera's mental voice carried warmth. "You are proof that the greatest advances come not from clinging to tradition or rushing blindly forward, but from finding the wisdom to know when to preserve and when to change." The chamber's walls pulsed with new patterns, reflecting the changes already spreading through Zetheri society. Telvor and his conspirators would face justice, but more importantly, their people would face the future, not with fear, but with the courage to evolve. "Besides," the Queen added, a touch of amusement in her thoughts, "someone needs to keep teaching us primitive humans can be full of surprises." As the chamber filled with the mental voices of council members eager to discuss the future, Nadia reflected on how far they'd come from that first distress call. Sometimes, the greatest journeys weren't measured in light years, but in the distance between what we thought was possible and what we dared to try. And sometimes, in the space between stars, it took a human doctor and an alien queen to remind two civilizations that the most sacred pattern of all was the courage to change. The end.